Hello, all of you beautiful people, and welcome to the Casey Gilboy podcast, where I say, let's talk about anything. I recently started a new series called Casey and Friends, where I interview people in my life who have experience and knowledge from their own lives. So today I'm interviewing my great friend Emily, who is an amazing woman of God. Emily was my roommate in college 22 years ago and became one of my best friends. We were bridesmaids in each other's weddings, have stayed in touch over the years, and have enjoyed watching each other's kids grow up. It's like seeing little versions of my best friend. It's so hilarious. I love it. And Emily and her husband, Jonathan, are wonderful parents, and they are dedicated volunteers serving in their church. Fun fact, they were both missionary kids growing up, which makes them unique and so special. Today on the podcast, Emily will be talking to us about foster care and adoption. So first of all, thank you so much for being on the podcast today, Emily. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, and then what led up to you deciding to become foster parents?
Thanks, Casey. It's fun to be on here with you. Well, I'm trying to think of where to start. So actually, when I was a little girl, I felt like the Lord wanted me to adopt. And I mean, in my head, I think I always imagined it was going to be amazing. And it was going to be a little African American girl, and she was going to have beautiful curly hair. And I was super excited about playing with her fluffy hair. So that was my like vision for what I thought the Lord would want me to do. And as we got as things went on and I had three kids, me and my husband decided we would no longer have any more children, so that we wanted to stay true to what God had told us to do is and adopt. So we stopped having kids after three, and we decided we were going to adopt. And so we looked at international adoption, we looked at like baby adoption in the United States, and we just didn't have any peace about either of those options. And so um, I learned a whole lot in a very short time about systems and about adoptions and about so a lot of ugly things, to be honest. And instead, my husband's like, we should foster. And I was like, if you feel like the Lord is telling you to foster, then I think that that's an answer, you know? So I was like, sure, we'll do that. I mean, I was not excited about the idea of fostering because I've heard all these horror stories and, so we decided to foster. And yeah, that was what led us to fostering.
Wow, I love that. I'm getting a memory now of us being in college and you talking about how you wanted to adopt specifically an
Yeah.
African American girl. Like, I
Yeah.
totally remember you talking about that. And I'm like, oh, I remember these conversations. I just forgot. Like, it's stuck in my
Oh,
memory. Sorry, my husband just tried to call me.
that
My
was
phone is
fun.
on Do Not Disturb, but he's the only one that can call me during Do Not Disturb. So
Yes, exactly.
I am
That's fun.
learning. I'm learning as I do this podcast. Hopefully, it's not an emergency. He'll call back if it is.
Yeah.
All right. So I remember when you were in that stage of life, and looking back, did you ask people in your life advice on fostering? Was there anyone else in your life who had been doing it, or was this all like new to you and you were like blazing a trail?
I don't think I knew anybody else that was fostering personally. I think I had met people, you meet people like there's this lady at church and she has two kids that she's fostering. But no, it's not, I would say even now, I probably know only a handful of people that are fostering.
So you pretty much were on your own to learn all of this stuff
Yeah.
back then, correct?
Yeah, yeah, to research stuff. But I mean, when you do get a group and an organization once you decide you're going to foster, you have to choose then what group you're going through. And I chose a Christian one. So that was really nice. And then they like give you as you probably know, they give you a ton of classes and they give you a ton of like homework and there's a lot of training, which is good. It's really good. It's very necessary. So
Wow. So someone who's listening to this podcast now, they probably have more resources to help them get started. But when you did this back then, you were kind of figuring this out on your own. Was that hard to do that on your own?
yeah, I mean it was a little frightening. It was a little I felt a little bit like fostering was a big unknown and like um then as you start to learn about it, I think it's very difficult like to have just it's overwhelming. I don't know how else to put it. It's kind of sad, saddening. It's disheartening. Learning about the way things work and about the situations that these children have to come through is really, really sad. And I think that it is sobering. I guess that's a good word, sobering. It's a sobering experience. But the group, after you get involved in a group, they're very supportive and they try their hardest to walk you through questions or whatever. So,
Okay, so now take us through that journey of how you started fostering and what that was like, and what were the hard
okay.
parts and what were the amazing parts.
So, well, um, I think like we only had 4 children come to our house, but we had them for each had them for a year. And then we usually took like a little break in between each one because it would really tire our family out. Having this child and then having them taken away. I guess I shouldn't say having them placed somewhere else. You
Yeah.
should I try that's how it feels, but I shouldn't use those words because that's not reality. It's just the way it feels. It feels a lot like your children are being taken from you,
Mm.
which is really difficult. And I think um, some of the best parts was learning how to communicate with the parents and to feel like Jesus really helped me because he led me into some relationships with the parents. He led me to long conversations on the phone with the parents often, and just led me to really be able to um, develop relationships. And then my heart, as you develop a relationship with somebody, it's easier to be going, voting for them, even if you maybe aren't 100% sure that they're going to be the best parent or that this is the best idea. You can at least be rooting for them. And I think that makes a huge difference in the way we approach like fostering is trying to see the best in people and trying to understand how hard life is for them, and that if we were in the same situation, we'd probably turn out the same way, like a lot of this is the grace of God on our lives that we can share his blessings with other people. And I think that that's the hugest part is I want to share my blessing because I come from like super rich family in spirit, like my grandparents were missionaries, my parents were missionaries, and I feel their blessings on my shoulders and they're heavy and I want to give them to other people. I don't want to keep the blessings of God. We're supposed to give them away, not keep them for ourselves. And I feel like that is what fostering was for me. But let's see, I was going to say something about um, the process. Oh, I'll think about it later. Do you have anything?
Yeah, no, no problem. I always have a million questions in my head. So because I know you so personally, I remember all this and I can put myself inside your head. One thing that I do think the Western Christian church struggles with is comfort.
Mm-hmm.
And you grew up a missionary kid, you've seen suffering, you've experienced
Mm-hmm.
suffering, you know how to suffer well, and not in like a martyr type of way, but like truly serving Jesus, sacrificing. What would your advice be to Christians out there who are thinking of fostering or adopting, but they're worried about the cost? And what would you speak into that from your experience and what you've learned from that?
I would say if you counted the cost of having your own children and the possibility of them having health problems or going astray in their faith or um, having a mental crisis, all of those things can happen to our own children. And I think if you would count the cost, nobody would want to have children at the beginning. And I think that that's the problem with fostering is we get that, like, we think of all of the, like, wow, this is going to be so hard. But the Lord always is with us through these things with our own kids too. I mean, my own kids aren't perfect. So
Yeah.
and I think like it will be such a blessing if you can foster. It's such a blessing to my children, especially, even more than me. I think they get to reap the benefit of seeing the Lord's hand in our lives and in the lives of other people. And they get to learn how to share and to be selfless and all of those things that you just can't really teach your kids. feel like they get to develop those skills of how to love people that are unlovable and how to look at people as human beings and not as inconveniences.
Mm,
And I think that that's Jesus's heart, you know. I remember what I was going to say, and this kind of segues into it. I was saying I think I went into fostering with a bad heart and with a wrong motivation, and I think that that is super common. I don't think that I think the Lord uses that. So I don't think if you think you might have the wrong motivation, if you feel like the Lord's leading you, you should do it. Just go for it because the Lord takes our motivations and our hearts, and He makes them His, and eventually He asks us the question: Are you willing to do this if you gain nothing out of it?
mm,
And I think that's what serving and loving is, right? True love is when you gain nothing back. And
mm,
so I think we get to see a piece of the Father's heart when we are in ministry, like together and
mm,
in ministry with the Lord, and we get to see how much He loves us. That like he didn't expect anything back, and that's a lot harder in practice than it is, just in word. So I think that
yes.
it taught me a lot about love and a lot about how much sacrifice true love is. So
Wow. And can you tell us a little bit about which one of you or your husband, wanted to foster first and how you started walking through the beginning of that journey, deciding to actually follow through?
so Jonathan was the one that wanted to foster. I was super wary because it's a heavy thing and you're like, oh, they're going to take these kids away from you and it's going to be horrible and the situations that they're in is going to be terrible and it's going to just rip your heart out every time. Like I get the same thing. I'm going to tell you, every time people find out that I'm a foster mom or have been, they always say, I could never do that. And it's like, I know that they're trying to be nice, but sometimes in my heart it equates to like, oh, I am so heartless that I can do it. But you have like a soft, beautiful heart. It just kind of like comes off at that. You're like, I would never have the heart to do that. I'm so glad you do, kind of
Mm,
like, and it's like, well, I think you learn a lot about your heart and about who you are when you put yourself out there and foster. And so yeah, it was not my choice, Jonathan. And like I said, if I would have like probably looked forward to some of the trials, I've been like, and he would have too, totally would have been like, no way, Jose, we're not doing this. This is not, no way at all. Never gonna do this again. But I mean, I'm sure with my own children or even marriage, sometimes you can hit those moments in life and you're like,
mm,
if I would have looked back at this moment, I don't know if I would have started this, but that's not, we can't stay in the moment, right? It's about the whole picture and it's about um God cares enough about me to transform my heart. And yeah, He does that through ministry. So um,
mm.
yeah, I don't know if I answered a lot of paperwork that you have to do, like just the logistic parts, lots of paperwork. You have to get fingerprinted, you have to get medical stuff done to make sure you're not going to die soon. Um, you go through classes. I don't know now what the process is. Of course, I can't like vouch for that because I think things change especially when you're in a government program, change a lot. Um, so those are some of just the things you have to do in order to um, be a foster parent.
Mm,
And they do give you some money per child, but it's not a whole lot. That's all I'm gonna say.
mm. Yeah, it basically
Probably depends
just
on
kind of
state.
helps you cover some costs, but it's not like you're
Yeah,
getting paid like a job.
probably wouldn't even cover diapers and formula over a month.
Mhm,
So, but it helps. It helps, and
mhm.
it's nice to have at least that. And there's some of that. Yeah. Is there any like
Yeah.
advice? I mean, I'm not sure what.
No, you're fine. I have so many questions. Like I'm trying to figure out which one to go for. I'll just kind of just let the Holy Spirit guide me. So you talked about how foster parenting affected your bio children for the better. And
Yeah.
I have experience with that. My parents were foster parents when I was growing up from elementary school up until college. And my parents only had two bio kids, myself and my brother. And when we brought these foster kids into our lives, it's kind of the same story you said. We only had a few kids, but we had them all quite long term. So you really get attached to these kids. And there were people in my parents' lives saying, "How dare you take away the attention from your bio kids and make them go through this? And basically you're going to make your kids suffer. And my parents would say, you can interview my kids and ask them. This was a family decision. My kids wanted it. They love the kids. And I remember crying when each kid went home. I remember feeling like my heart was ripped out, like I lost a sibling. But to this day, my brother and I love children, have always served with children, have had a heart with children, know how to work with them. And I think if he were on here right now too, he would say the same thing, that it made us better people, it made us better parents, and gave us insight into different demographics of our city, of our world, and say, hey, not everybody grew up the same way as you do. So maybe they have issues that you don't because they didn't have the tools or the support or the resources, and it makes you be more empathetic.
Yeah.
And so I'm just really glad you brought that up because I think some people are afraid what it's going to do to their kids. So do you have a few minutes to just share what changes you've seen in your own bio kids for the better because of having foster siblings?
I think, yeah, their empathy, their just readiness to love other people. I love that. And they were super sad when we stopped fostering. Um, I mean, I was not, but they were super sad when we stopped fostering. So, just to see that they were so willing to like, they shared a room, so they sacrificed a lot. All my kids were in the same room, all three of them. Um, they would help out with the kids. They were so excited when the kid would would learn how to crawl or walk or talk, or they were so enthralled with the child, and they were so willing and ready to accept. Even after losing one child in our house, they would be ready and excited to get the next one. And it killed me watching them say goodbye like that. That's always the hardest right there, because
Mm,
it's one thing for you to see the pain that it brings you, but it's hard when it hurts your own children's hearts. You know that, but they are willing. You know what I mean? And I think that's the wonderful thing about children is they're so willing to try again and to develop another relationship. And I think as adults, we just so quick to harden our hearts and just be callous ourselves and just like, I got hurt. I'm not doing that again because that
mhm.
was terrible. And I'm not saying there's not reasons like for people to stop fostering. There always are, but
Yeah.
um,
That's
yeah.
beautiful. Thank you. I do feel like that's one of the top issues that I have heard from people.
Mhm.
And just to hear from you and me saying, if anything, God's going to use it for even greater purposes in your child's life,
Mhm.
more than you could even comprehend. Because that's what Jesus does. He takes ashes and turns them into beauty. And
Right.
serving another child in need in your city is only going to help your own child to grow in positive ways. And it may
Yeah.
be hard, and I'm sure we could do a whole nother podcast of the sacrifice your kids have made, like you said,
Mhm.
all being one room. But I do think that the sacrifice is outweighed by the blessings and how God changes them from the inside out, and how in this life as Christians, we will have suffering, but
Mhm.
that suffering is used for our good.
Mhm.
And I would rather have a child that's suffered but has grown closer to Jesus rather than had everything easy to them and no problems. And then they struggle in life having a relationship with Jesus because they didn't have these chances to grow in their faith. And so, in your opinion, how has your and your husband and kids' faith grown because of foster care and adoption?
Um, I think in my ability to love, like you said, and to just to be more empathetic towards the people who are not like me and the poor, or you kind of like sometimes look at them and you say, why are they doing what they're doing? Like they're just stuck in this horrible cycle. Like, and you kind of think in your head, like, if I were in their situation, I would do this and I wouldn't be so stuck in this rut. Like I would get out of it. And I think it just makes me realize how hard things can be for other people. It really does make me feel so blessed and I guess humbled that God would allow me not to be in their circumstances. And I think like I'm hoping it's not always true, but I'm hoping that I'm more willing to be understanding and reach out to people who are in need to understand that God has given me that privilege. So I need to be a privilege and a blessing to someone else. And so that, yeah, like I don't hoard his blessings. Oh, I hope I don't hoard his blessings. Like that's, I think that's a huge like worry living in the States, especially for me, is just hoarding God's blessing. Like, yeah, I don't want to be a bomb shelter Christian.
Mm. That's why I love
Hunker
you so
down and
much.
wait for God to come back and hoard all his blessings to myself. Like, oh, I don't want to do that. Oh, that'd be, feel like, I don't know if it's true. I have this like little saying in my head that I feel like in the Bible, when you read the Bible, God either used people to bless other people because they were willing, or he used them because they were unwilling, and he took their blessings and gave them to someone else. And I think that that's always, I want to be a willing giver. I don't want God to have to take away my blessings in order for me to realize how blessed I am, I guess. So
Mm. Wow, that was beautiful. That could be a whole nother sermon right there, Em. Oh,
can I
okay.
share a little story?
Yeah, go ahead.
Like kind of the whole, I want to just share the story of how the promise was fulfilled, kind of.
Sure.
Because I think it's a really special story, and I want people to understand that God works in amazing ways, and He is still the God of miracles. So from the very beginning, like I said, we came into it maybe with a false understanding. I don't think you should ever enter fostering if you can help it with the idea that you're going to come out with a child on the other side. You probably should never do that to yourself. It's a really hard thing, and you should always just be waiting for God to bless you. But because we went into it with that expectation and with a promise, I felt like that God, this is how God was going to fulfill the promise that he had given me, that we should adopt. So I was like, okay. So after our third child had gone back to his family, which was good. He went back to his family. I was very happy about it. It was a wonderful thing. We there was quite a break because life was hectic and things were crazy. But right before we opened our license, like literally I was going to open the license the next day, and it just happened. Well, I think a couple weeks before that, I had kind of come to this like realization we needed to stop fostering soon, and my heart was broken because I felt like God hadn't really fulfilled this promise. And you know how when you feel like that, like you kind of like something in your soul is like, I'm going to just have to be happy and accept that maybe this was not from the Lord. Maybe this was all we were supposed to do from it, you know? And so I had kind of laid it down at God's feet, and I felt like peace about it. Well, my birthday was the next day, and I got a call from a lady from church, and she said, my sister is going to have a baby, and I need someone to take the child. And so, like, I heard you foster. And I was like, I have an open bed. This is exciting. And so I was super excited. And I just felt like it was that confirmation from the Lord. You know, when you give up a dream and then God was like, no, this is really what I'm going to do. And so he reaffirmed it. And then, anyway, I'm sure there was lots of like, I found out that you can't just have a child placed in your home, even if you want to. The child has to be, it's just going to be put in some random home. And it was just like this up and down of super like highs and lows. And we went through this for quite a while. And then in the process, yeah, just a lot of hard things happened to me. And it was just one of those seasons that was super rough. And then finally, we were able to visit the baby in the hospital, and we got to hold him for the first time. And he was placed with us miraculously. It really was miraculously that he was placed with us. And I just knew that this was the one that God had promised. And so I remember I wrote him a little lullaby about how he was the promised child. And I still sing it to him
Oh.
anyway. And so, yeah, it's just one of those things where you see God turn out. I don't know, something that seemed like it was broken, and he comes through in the very end. And it's just such a blessing, and such a privilege to be able to have that promise fulfilled and to have my little man in my life. And I am very, yeah, I'm very, uh, I am very much at peace that knowing that he is where he belongs. And so,
Hmm,
yeah, it's comforting.
beautiful. I love that. Well, we're probably going to have to do
Yep.
another podcast episode because we're almost out of time. That's what happens when we get talking. And maybe God knew this message needed to just be about fostering, and then we'll do
Mhm.
another one
Yeah.
about your journey of adoption because
Yeah.
that's a whole nother
Yeah.
amazing episode we could do. But I love how you just tied that into how God spoke to you and then how he fulfilled his promise, even when you surrendered it back to him and said, even though you spoke to me and I obeyed you, it seems like you're not giving me what I want, and I surrender it to you. And then that's when he gave you what you wanted. And I feel like God
Hmm.
does that a lot. I'm not
Hmm.
sure why he does it, but he's done it a lot with me too.
Yeah.
So
The surrender part. And then,
yeah, surrender is huge. I
mhm.
I love that about you and Jonathan, and just so grateful you were on here today. So quick before Zoom kicks us out here, what is one fun memory that you have of us? I like to ask all of my interviewees here just something fun to end the podcast on a light note. So, what is your favorite memory of us?
My funniest memory of us is when we were in Famous Dave's and I dared you to do the chicken dance during the salsa and you did. And I was like, so like, I laughed so hard and I couldn't believe you did it. Like, I was like, oh my goodness, you made me laugh so hard. And your Napoleon Dynamite dance, that made me laugh so hard, by the way.
I'm not remembering about the chicken dance, but
No,
maybe if I sit and think harder. I remember going to Famous Dave's and
you
salsa
don't remember?
dancing.
Even we're humming the little dee 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 dee.
Sounds like something I would do.
It
Hey,
was Christine was there, so you can ask her.
oh, that's Christine. We were Bible college students, okay? This is as crazy as we got. Is chicken
Oh
dance
yeah. No, there's no drinking
actions
or
at
anything.
salsa dance
Just
night.
pretty much chicken dance at salsa night.
That's about as crazy as we Bible college students got, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, well, thank you so much for being on the podcast
Yep.
today, Emily. I really feel like God was guiding our conversation and knew what we needed to talk about today. And it would mean so much to me if all of you listeners could share, subscribe, and tune into the podcast for more episodes. And thank you for hanging out with us today on the podcast. So have a great week, all of you beautiful people. Goodbye.